Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Radiant Life Podcast, Episode 2. I'm your host, Brandon, and today we are going to get into my journey that took me from addiction to recovery to the creation of this program and this podcast. In this, I'm going to be sharing my personal experience through addiction, through recovery, and kind of the feelings and the emotions and the different challenges I faced while I was going through this. But I wanted to give a little bit more history of myself and what brought me to want to do something like this and create something like this. For people going through life, struggling, wanting more, wanting to live to their highest ability, to find out what happiness and success means to them, and then really strive to achieve that however they define those words. So my journey with addiction definitely started when I was younger. I had an addictive personality, whether it was with Dragon Ball Z, with Pokemon, with wrestling, whatever it was that I was into, I would fully get into. A lot of this came from, I just wanted to escape myself. I wanted to be out of myself. Because when I was sitting there with my own thoughts, even when I was younger, I just never felt good about myself. I felt isolated. I felt alone. I had no self-confidence. I didn't know, how I fit in or where I fit in. And I was always just super self-conscious when I was around anybody else. And those feelings really connect to why I found comfort in using and in drugs. I remember having my first beer when I was young, probably about 11. And it was kind of a funny story with me and my friend stealing one of his dad's Budweisers, and we took a drink of it and decided it was gross. But then we're like, oh, well, we've heard of mixed drinks, so let's mix some Budweiser with some Coca-Cola. Needless to say, that wasn't any good either. But I just remember that being my first forte into my first foray into using, and just getting that little bit of a buzz that made me feel okay. And that really took hold in my teen years, where I started drinking a little bit and started smoking a lot of weed. I was basically smoking every day. Just because I felt better when I was high. When I was high, I didn't have to deal with myself. I didn't have to deal with my own thoughts. I didn't have to sit in my own thoughts. I could just be somebody else. I could have this false sense of confidence, or, if you've been stoned or high before, your mind just, it's either not thinking at all or it's thinking about some crazy stuff. So I never had to sit there and think about myself and sit in my own thoughts. And that's kind of where my journey took me. I fell in love with drugs at that age and really started thinking, all right, yeah, this is something I need to be all the time. Even though I was still doing well in school, I was a soccer player. By my senior year of high school, I had a scholarship to go play in college, and I took it. And so my freshman year of college, I played on a college soccer team at Division II level. And when I got that sense of freedom, when I got out of, my parents' house and I got away from my parents, I went away about 8 hours. I had a freedom I wasn't used to. And I definitely was not ready for that. I kind of threw away that freshman year, at least grades wise. And growing any type of good habits by drinking or getting stoned every day, every night, every morning. And really that became, by the end of that, that's all I wanted to do. I just wanted to be high all the time. I wanted to drink all the time. I wanted to party all the time. And So in between my freshman and sophomore year of college, I was, experimenting with other drugs, and that's when I was introduced to heroin. And at first, I would snort it, and after doing it once, like it took over my mind. That's all I could think about all the time, and I really just started to really obsess over it. When I was getting ready to go back down for preseason my sophomore year, the night before, I decided I would try to shoot it up. And I was like, well, I'm not going to get super addicted doing this because I'm leaving tomorrow. I'm not going to be able to get it where I'm going. So I think I'm safe to try it. So I remember doing that for the first time, and my mentality behind that really showed how sick I was. I thought, that was something that was awesome that I just tried. I even told one of my friends, and, he was complete opposite of that. He might drink a little bit, but he was not about that. And I told him, and he was just like, dude, what are you doing? Like, be careful doing that. And so that next day I went down for preseason, and right away I just wasn't right. I couldn't focus on what I was doing. I couldn't find my passion for soccer anymore. And all I wanted to do was sit in my dorm room by myself and get high and chase that feeling that I got that first time I shot up. And I only lasted about 2 more weeks down there until I dropped out, lost my scholarship, quit, and came back home. And that's where my using started to get really bad. I was high every day. I was shooting up. I was trying different things. I was just putting myself in environments that weren't good for me and that I probably wouldn't have put myself in otherwise. And it was a struggle, like going through that, having all this at my fingertips, and then all of a sudden it just being gone and back in my parents' basement. And, the only joy I found was putting that needle in my arm, and taking away all the pain, all the depression, all the anxiety, all the negative thoughts I had about myself. And I would just drift away in that drug, in that high, and be okay for a few minutes until I had to get up and chase it again. So I dealt with that for a few years, kind of bouncing around. I went back down to West Virginia to try to figure it all out. Ended up in Georgia for a little bit, again to try to figure it all out, and eventually ended up moving to Lansing, Michigan, and that's where I had always gone to get my drugs. I'd always go down to Lansing. So I moved there, to try a new opportunity at a small Christian college, and I ended up playing soccer there for a semester. But when I moved there, I ended up moving into a building with 2 heroin addicts, and it didn't take long for me to really fall back into that pattern. And I ended up getting evicted out of that apartment. I ended up kind of homeless there, trying to figure out places to sleep. I remember I'd go into gas stations and steal a little bit of food each day, 6 packs of crackers, some gummy worms or something just to eat, while I found new ways to get money, new ways to get high, and really did whatever I could. And this was really where I started to hit rock bottom. This was where I was ready to give up. I was ready for the drugs to take my life. I didn't want to live anymore. I'd been living like that for about 6 years of, trying to put my life together and then falling back apart and trying again and falling back apart, and trying again and falling back apart. And I was just tired. And I was okay if, that last time I used, if that was my last breath I would take. And that's a scary place to be. Scary place to, to be okay with possibly losing your life every time you inject something into your veins. So on my 25th birthday, my parents found out what was going on, or they found out how bad it had gotten, and really pushed for me to come back to their house and get me into rehab. And so I tried that, and it took us about, well, it took us a couple weeks to find a rehab place for me to get into. And while I was home, it was just, I was doing the same thing. I was stealing money from them. I was lying to them. I was just doing whatever I could to get high. And I remember one of the hardest moments I had while I was using. I'm a big mama's boy. I'll admit that. And my mom got to the point where she couldn't do it anymore. And for the first time in all the hell I put them through, she sat there and called the cops on me while I was in front of her. And so while that was happening, I threw on a jacket, threw on some boots. My dad kind of got in my way, but then I just sat down on the stairs and watched my mom call the cops on me and not even be able to talk. She was crying so hard. And that was the start of just kind of getting that mindset of I can't run anymore. I can't do this anymore. I'm just, I'm so done. And I ended up getting into a rehab place up in Traverse City. Even while I was on the phone with the rehab place, I was lying to them, saying I hadn't used in a couple of days or a couple of weeks, so that way I didn't have to go to detox. And that just showed how sick I was. Even going to the place that was going to help me, I was still lying about the situation I was in and how bad it really was. And I didn't really realize it until that first night where withdrawals really started to hit me. It's the first time I hadn't used anything in a very, very long time. And I felt like I was losing my mind. I felt like there was no way I was going to be able to do this. And so about 2:00 in the morning, my first night there, I threw on some pajama pants, boots. I could barely move. I had no energy, nothing left in me. But I was like, I'm gonna get out of here. So I broke out of the rehab center at about 2 a.m. up in Traverse City in February. And if anybody's familiar with that area, it's pretty cold with a lot of snow. And so I made it probably 100 feet out the door, up a little hill that was right outside the rehab center, and I just collapsed in the snow. And I remember looking up into the sky. It's a pretty clear night, looking at the stars and just thinking to myself, this is it. This is how I'm going to go. Either I'm going to keep running and I'm going to go out and I'm going to die in the street somewhere, or I can try. I can go back in there. I can, put everything I have into it, and I can try to change my life. And luckily, I went with that second option. Whether it was an epiphany, a light bulb moment, a sign. But it was a moment of clarity and a moment where I had to make a choice. And I made a choice that brought so much joy and so much happiness to my life that I just thought I was never going to have. It wasn't easy, those early days in recovery, trying to figure out, what to do with my time, how to re-interact with people. I was so used to interacting with people, either high or drunk. That was a whole new concept to me. How to be able to sit there in my thoughts and be okay with who I was, and be okay with who I was becoming. I felt a lot of shame and guilt for things that happened while I was using. And that's been a really tough thing still to this day that I feel every once in a while that is hard for me to move past. But I really threw my energy and my motivation into recovery. And it brought me some opportunities in life that were just amazing, whether it was coaching soccer, whether it was working with kids, whether it was, meeting new people, making new connections, brought me and my wife back together. Or at the time, not my wife, but my girlfriend at the time. And, we eventually got married and had 2 boys. but that journey of self-growth and recovery and finding out the tools that would make me happier and just a better person overall, not for myself, but for those around me, was really what brought me to this point. And this point being the idea behind Radiant Life and creating that. You know, I've been going through some stuff the last few months where I remember telling somebody that I felt like I was using again because of how terrible I felt about my life. I was unhappy. I was isolated. And even when I was around other people, I was alone. And that's just where I was in my mind. And I didn't want that again. You know, I didn't want to fall back into those old habits and old patterns and really just say screw it and end up back in addiction. And I wanted more out of life again. I wanted to feel good about life again and motivated about life again. And I missed that early recovery feeling. And so I went through some different things and you know, it wasn't all perfect. Some of it was some bad decision making. Some of it was, you know, I think happened for a reason. And that brought me to the idea behind Radiant Life and creating a program and a community that is really all about that journey, you know, facing those challenges and being able to get through them, being able to have those support systems that will guide you and push you to the levels of happiness and success that you may have never thought you could have ever reached. And, you know, so I love the words behind it. I love the words that came with it and illuminate and navigate and radiate. And illuminating being that idea of that initial part of the journey, right? Like shining that light on those areas that need light. And for me, it was shining light on myself and shining light on those problems and those demons that I had inside of me, or those, you know, that lack of self-worth, that lack of courage, that lack of healthy relationships on my life, and what could I really do about it? You know, and then that takes you into the next step of navigating that. You know, once you identify the things you need to work on or build on or grow in, then you can figure out, well, how do I build on that? How do I grow in that? And that's that navigating phase of, all right, well, I've now taken the first steps to this journey. So now where does this journey take me? You know, how do I find this? And going into the last step of it, of Radiate, is getting to that point that you want to be at and radiating that light and that positive energy and that hope and that gratitude and that love into those around you, into the environments that you're in, into the people that you're around, into the ideas that you have, and doing that consistently. Because as I learned, you know, I thought I had it together after 4 or 5 years of recovery. I stopped that path of growth. I stopped that journey, and I just got content with where I was. I was like, all right, well, life is pretty good. It's better than where I was, and I think I'm okay now. And that's where I messed up. You know, I stopped that journey. I stopped navigating through everything. I stopped radiating that positive energy and that hope out. And that's why this program is coming to life, is to keep that going. And whether that's to keep that going just in this podcast and connecting with people in that way, or finding different people to reach to and connect with in small groups or one-on-one, or, you know, but the biggest thing with it is, no matter what environment it is in, it's all about guidance. It's all about discovering your own path. By no means am I saying I have the answers to life and I have it all together. That is not it at all. This is a program that takes your own motivation, your own progress, your own ideas, your own passion, and bringing that out, radiating that out, and really taking hold of that and going forward. So I'm excited about this experience. I'm excited and passionate about growing something and building something that could be really special. Whether that's just in one person's lives or many people's lives. I think it can be something that can grow into a community of people that want to radiate positive energy to those around them in their own life, in their environments, and seek it to grow and be better themselves every single day. And so, yeah, and I'm excited. I think it's going to be a wonderful journey. I hope to keep you along for the ride and to keep you engaged and, to hopefully give you something that you can take away, whether that's one little tidbit every now and again, or whether that's from somebody joining me for an interview and hearing a story that you can connect with more. There's going to be a variety about life and guidance in this program, and finding what works for you is the most important thing to your own happiness and your own success. And hopefully Radiant Life can just be one of those tools that you can use, or that you can lean on, or that you can find somebody in to help continue your path to having a radiant, illuminate life as you go. So I really am grateful for everybody joining me on this journey, on this podcast, listening in. And I thank you for listening to my personal experiences, something I'm sure I'll go into more in more detail at different times, depending on the topic and the discussion and the person I'm talking with at the time. But expect a lot more. I'll get a schedule out with, let you know what's coming, the different ideas behind it. And if you have any ideas yourself, please feel free to reach out, comment, send them to me. This is really a community journey and more than just about me. It's about bringing those tools to everybody around us to illuminate, navigate, and radiate. So again, I thank you for your time. I'm looking forward to this journey with all of you. I appreciate it, and we'll see you next time.